morning, everyone, and welcome to a really exciting HMA webinar. We're joined by Steve and Richard from CTI Digital, who are going to be taking us through a really exciting session on unlocking customer data and solving the cookie conundrum. I cannot tell you how important this is, and I can see a number of people flooding into the session today, so I'm sure they'll gain a huge amount of insight from it. In terms of the housekeeping for this session, it will be recorded. We are going to be distributing the recording to all of the attendees of the webinar. We really encourage you to engage, to ask questions, to use the Q&A down at the bottom of the screen, and there'll be plenty of time for some QA at the end, and also we'll showcase Steve and Richard's details at the end as well, in case you'd like to get in touch with them, because I imagine this is going to uncover lots of questions that you might have to apply to your own business after quite a holistic, a deep dive into all the content. I'm sure there's going to be ways that you can apply this in all sorts of different manners. So we'll have their details at the end as well. If you haven't yet registered for the Hotel Marketing Awards, please do. It's on the 18th of June. So if you just head over to the Hotel Marketing Association website, head over to events, and you should be able to book your place there. It'll be at Ham Yard Hotel, which is the same as last year. We had a record number of entries this year, with a record number of categories. We announced the shortlist at the National Hotel Marketing Conference recently. So it's been great to see a really, really good buzz on social all about that. But without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Richard, who's going to take us through the agenda of this session, and then I believe we'll be handing to Steve, who's going to get into the meat and potatoes of it. But yeah, I'll pass over to Richard now.
Thank you, Harry. Hi, I'm Richard Metcalf. I'm Sales Director here at CTI Digital. I'm going to give you a quick intro into CTI Digital, and then we'll pass over to Steve for the main event. Steve, do you want to click onto a few slides? That's okay. I'll pass it on. Yeah, so CTI Digital, who are CTI? So we are a digital transformation agency based in Manchester. We've been operating for 20 years. And we help businesses to digitally transform the digital estate. We have these three key pillars here, starting with experience. So we have a team of user researchers, UX, UI designers, through to conversion optimization, really informing data that helps our kind of website applications and other applications. Into our technology side of the business, so as I say, we build websites, we build web applications, we build native applications, for a whole variety of clients, including several hotel clients. And then lastly is our growth services. So once we build a website, we support our clients with conversion optimization, with digital marketing, with SEO, with email marketing. So yeah, there are three key pillars. And then we've got a few nice current clients within the hotel sector. We're currently working with Devere. We've just, this little snippet on the right hand side is the new booking engine. We've built that on a Drupal site, and that integrates with Opera Web Service. And we're also working with Grand Hotel Birmingham and Nottingham venues. And previously we have worked with Oman Hotels. So we've got some good experience within the hotel sector. But anyway, that's enough about CTI. I'll pass you over to Steve, who's going to talk you through this presentation.
Thanks very much, Rich. Good morning, everybody. Just to introduce myself, my name's Steve Whiteley. I'm the Digital Analytics Manager here at CTI. I've got over 20 years experience in digital marketing. I'm not going to admit to any more than that. It's probably less than optimal too. More recently, I worked for Jet2, leading the data visualization efforts there. I'm known in CTI as Data Steve, which makes me sound quite nerdy and like a character from Star Trek. It seems to be a name that's stuck. So I'm just going to be talking you through the current privacy environment and some of the solutions which can be deployed and implemented. But first, a story about privacy, and maybe this will highlight the wider issue. So I got in my car a couple of months ago with my son at home, and I had a flat tire. Not unusual in itself, but when I realized that, the phone suddenly rang, and it was the car company saying, we realize you've got a flat tire. Would you like any assistance? And at first, I didn't know what to think of this. And my son suddenly chirped up and said, you've actually bought a car, Dad, that spies on you. And, you know, that's quite an embarrassing thing to be told. You know, you're meant to be the leader of all knowledge when you're a father. So, you know, how did this make me feel? Well, I know I might have ticked a box somewhere that allowed them to contact me, but I can't remember. And suddenly they're on the phone to me telling me something about my car. So I felt that my privacy had been invaded slightly. When the guy rang me up, he didn't say why he was authorized to make this call, or what I ticked, or how to get out of future calls. So the whole process was a little unnerving. Now, if they were spying on my tire pressure, what else are they looking at? How fast I drive around corners, my maximum speeds. So you don't really know, and it creates uncertainty and doubt about the brand that you're involved with. And I think that's the thing about privacy. And generally, we seem to look at privacy from a legislative viewpoint, something that's pushed on us, rather than a way we operate our business for the benefit of our customers. And I think those two things have got a bit confused, and we need to kind of return to how we view privacy in general and how it can be a business benefit. So how did we get to the current point of legislation and, to be honest, some privacy confusion? Well, you know, back in 2000, Google used to have a slogan called "Do no evil." I don't know if many of you remember that. Do no evil. A subjective statement for those that are into SMART goals and measurable goals. It's not really a useful goal, because it can't be defined or particularly measured. So then they got into a lot of online advertising through their AdWords system. And in 2010, Eric Schmidt came up with another slogan or interview quote: "The Google policy on a lot of things is to get right up to the creepy line and not cross it." So he was kind of indicating that that was their decision, how close they got to it. So they were defining something that was subjective in itself. So again, not a good goal. You kind of, if there's a moral hazard there, AdWords went on to be 80% of their revenue, and yet they were in control of how it worked. So they obviously privacy kind of took a back seat, really. So going back to the point of data and giving you data, can I just ask a question? Who loves ice cream? I know that most of us do. Oh, Harry's just raised his hand there. Thank you, Harry.
Sorry, I was getting a bit overexcited on the interaction.
You were banging there on that one. Any particular flavour, Harry?
Bit rogue, rum and raisin.
Rum and raisin. Wow.
It's quite left field, but yeah.
It is a bit left field. I'm a plain vanilla man myself. So I've got Harry's data there. Thank you for your data, Harry. I'm now going to disclose to you that I work in marketing for Walls Ice Cream. So what can I do with Harry's data? Or if everybody answered that question, what could I do with that data? So the level one, and this is kind of going down the amount of money that can be earned from this data. I know there are X percentage of people in the group that love ice cream, but I didn't record who. So a few people raised their hands. I might have also recorded some demographic data, but that's all aggregated. It doesn't identify you personally, unless there were only like 2 females in the group and 1 male, and so unless it was a very small group. So that's kind of like the first level of how I would use that data. The next level is first party and zero party user level data. So we're moving on here towards the creepy line. First party data is data that you collect through your website, and zero party data. It's a subtle definition, but that's something that's unlike web tracking. Zero party data is something that's actively given to you, like a customer will subscribe to a newsletter or give you their email address, ask to be contacted for a PDF download or something like that. So I'm using I'm getting a unique identifier, either a web tracking cookie or an email address, and I'm using that to target my marketing. So it's my data, I've collected it, Even Google Analytics is first-party data because I collect it, and then I can use that in my marketing with consent. So here we move on to the next level, which is first-party use level data and first-party sharing of that data. So Google may have people who are logged in to their Google account while surfing the web. I know I often logged into my Google account, who may have agreed or not disagreed with being able to receive advertising based on first-party sharing. So in Google Analytics, you can enable features whereby you can share. So if you, for example, if a user converts on your website and you have their email address, you can encrypt that email address and then send it to Google, who can then match it to what they know about that customer and then record that conversion. So that's first-party data sharing, and that's going to become very big because when third-party cookies are eventually deprecated, not until 2025, and if then it's possibly doubtful, then first-party data sharing is going to become important, and the data that you have, the first-party data that you own, will become important, and how you utilize that. So some people might feel that's already approaching, bypass the creepy line, because the creepy line is subjective. That's the important bit. It moves for different people. I know my parents are very privacy conscious. I'm less so. So it's horses for courses, really. And if we move on to past the creepy line, and this is where things we started to get in trouble legislatively. Google was earning 80% of their total revenue from their advertising platform, so they had a moral hazard, and nobody really wanted to address privacy. So in the end, it was left to legislation to address this issue. So, for example, if Harry had given me the answer, he likes rum and raisin, that would not be recorded by me. That would be recorded by a third party who possibly Harry was not aware of, and that third party could then share that data with other third parties and advertise to him based on his response. So you can see that is this is why people started to get followed around the web by adverts that prick their ears up because they thought they were being subvertly tracked. So we got to this stage of third-party data and third-party tracking. And that's where the money lies. Now, because of legislation, this is going to have to take a back seat now, and they're pushing back on third-party data sharing. So we'll look at ways to resolve both of the consent issue and the third-party cookie deprecation issue. So did Harry give consent? Well, I didn't tell him what I was going to use the information for or who I was. I didn't tell him who I was going to share the information with, and I didn't tell Harry what other information I was recording about him along with his answer, i.e. his name. So informed and explicit consent under GDPR could not be given. And this is what a cookie policy and a privacy policy are all about. It's about explaining, what you're collecting, what you're going to do with that data, and what other information you're going to share about the user. So let's just look again at different cookies. We've got first-party cookies. People think that Google Analytics is third-party. It's not third-party. It's first-party. That's your data. It sits on you collected it via Google Analytics, and so it's a first-party cookie. Then you can then share that back to Google with consent to do that first-party data matching, as it were. Third-party cookies are from a third-party server, and any other website can load that third-party server's cookie server code and then proceed to advertise to that user. So they're quite different. A lot of third-party cookies are already blocked. People talk about this like it's going to happen in the future. Safari, if you look at mobile traffic and how that's exploded, Safari are already blocking third-party cookies. So there is the issue that it's not just a new thing. So there's a lot of things online. excuse me, a lot of things online about cookieless future. It really is a buzzword at the moment, and of course, it doesn't really tell you what you need to do. It's foggy. It's just cookies are going away. Well, so what? First-party cookies are not going away anytime soon. The web needs to work with first-party cookies. Websites need them to function, to hold login details. They need them to record personalization elements of the website. So the impact is just going to be on retargeting ads and ad personalization. That's where the impact is. This third-party advertising. So you go on your site and then you re-advertise to somebody. So that used to be a kind of automated thing, set and forget. It would just do it, go into AdWords, publish your ads, put your code in your website, and off you go. But it's no longer eventually going to be the case. So we've got two issues to contend with. One is consent, and the other is third-party cookie deprecation, or depreciation, as some people are calling it, but it's deprecation. So we got consent. No consent may block all tracking and marketing cookies, and also first-party cookies as well. So it's how you approach consent, whether you take consent seriously. And then we've got third-party cookie deprecation, which is going to make it difficult to advertise on other websites if somebody's performed an action on your website. It's not going to be a slick automated process anymore. So new privacy laws have already led to a reported 39% reduction in customer tracking. That's massive. So everybody, even with the new privacy laws before third-party cookie deprecation, are struggling with online tracking of digital analytics generally. This, I have to say, was last updated on March the 14th. So who is currently complying? What are other people doing with regards to actually having the banner and getting consent from users regarding whether they set non-essential cookies? So we've got some big names here. Let's just see, as of March 14th, who were compliant. Dyson, they weren't compliant. They've obviously done the sums. They've gone, well, 100 million fine from the ICO is not even going to be a drop in the ocean. And what are we going to lose if we comply with regards to tracking and advertising? So they didn't comply. University of Oxford, not compliant. Asda, not compliant. Aldi, compliant in Germany, not compliant in the UK. Jet2 Holidays were not compliant. Now they're compliant. TUI, not compliant in the UK, compliant in Germany. Ryanair, an interesting one. That wasn't compliant prior to the 14th of March, and now it is compliant. So you've got this tapestry of people taking different routes to whether they're taking privacy seriously. And it maybe affects the brand. That me just telling you that about Dyson, how does that change your view of Dyson as a brand? Is the long-term gain, is their short-term gain potentially going to be mitigated by a press article or something about being not compliant? And what does that say about the culture of the company? So a lot of these companies have become compliant because things are starting to get real. The Digital Markets Act, which is a European initiative, pushed the responsibility of getting consent from the business owner to the big tech giants, Google, Meta, and a few others. So they said that you have to have a record of whether somebody's consented if you want to continue advertising to them. So this actually was an email sent out by Google, January 23rd, 2024, where they said, you're not compliant. You don't have a banner. You're not compliant. We can't advertise because in the EEA, along with UK, users need to consent first, and they need to pass the consent parameters and the values to Google before they can advertise for you. So I think this is what drove a lot of companies who weren't compliant to suddenly then be compliant. And that's where the rubber met the road, really. And so we've yet to see the effects of this and how strictly Google are going to enforce it. So third-party cookie deprecation was meant to happen this year, July, August time. Google are in a real quandary about this. They're going to lose a lot of money. There's no way around it. They're trying to solve the problem that's going to drastically impact their revenue, but they're having huge trouble because they don't seem to be able to solve it. One of their initiatives, like a privacy sandbox, where you record who's interested in football or who's interested in different activities, it doesn't encapsulate the nuance of how people purchase. Somebody who's interested in football might be one day interested in I don't know, sofas or socks, or it's not granular enough. All it's doing is getting a very aggregated view of somebody's interests. So that is why when I did this presentation a couple of months ago, I said they're just going to kick the can down the road for as long as they can. They're going to come up with excuses. And I mean, even though now you can see that they are highlighting third-party cookies and that they will not be, available in future Chrome versions, even though they've highlighted them, they've yet to say when that is. It could be 2025. Then they'll start working on a new initiative, and maybe it won't even get there. Who knows? Who knows? It will have to be enforced upon them in a strict way, and it will cause quite a significant impact on their business. So there's GDPR, obviously, and complying with it, asking users for consent. But there's also how do we get a fuller view of analysis, even though consent has been consent has not been given. And this is Google's problem. It's also a business problem. So Google have been frantically coming up with different initiatives to try and mitigate the impact of GDPR. And just to run through those initiatives, I won't go in too much detail, but the first one is Google Consent Mode, where if a consent is not given, a cookieless ping, a bit of information is sent to Google that user has triggered an event. It's not at a user level, it's at an anonymized level. Having said that, if you look at what it sends, it does include the IP address, which it falls under GDPR. So is it legal? Is it not? The jury's out on this. We have different clients. Some within the UK have implemented it. Some people within European clients have not implemented it because they believe it breaks GDPR. But that is one of the ways that that Google is trying to mitigate GDPR. Google Enhanced Conversions, that's identity resolution, basically. So when the user completes completes your booking form, you send an encrypted their encrypted email address to Google, and then Google match it with their logged in users, and then they can look. Then that's the example of that first party sharing, that a conversion has been made, and then it identifies that person through the first party sharing method. Google Signals, you might have seen this in your GA4 property. That's to do with cross-device tracking and audience remarketing. Again, it's a first-party data sharing approach. You can tell Google, if you have Google Signals enabled and your privacy policies up to date, that if a user says, gets to the booking form but doesn't complete, we can then track that user, first-party data sharing, and advertise to them as an audience, advertise to them within the Google Ads framework. The problem with all these features is, you're constantly messing with the benchmark or the baseline of your data. Consent mode, example, if you have enough traffic, can remodel your data back up to levels pretty close to pre-GDPR. But then how do you benchmark? And you have to, how do you look at what's changed? If everything's going up and down. The ideal thing is to concentrate on ratios where GDPR is concerned. What is the ratio conversion for your booking form rather than sheer numbers? So that's one way to approach it. Yes, Harry.
A quick question at this point. The hotel space is incredibly fragmented with regard to where all of the digital experiences actually happen. You've got third-party booking engines, third-party spa, third-party table reservations, etc., sitting on various different booking engines. And so, one question I think might be really interesting to tackle is how, just as a definition, are all of the bookings that happen on the booking engine at whatever.bookingenginecompany.com, how does that fall into sort of first party and third party?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting point, and I think it's a case of how that relationship is set up. Now, prior to GDPR, that relationship might be set up with that's a shared data source, or it might be that it goes directly into a private area within that booking engine. So it's important to clearly state that is where you're collecting data, and if that booking engine has different uses for that data, then you have to specify to your customer before they consent what those uses are. I think it depends on the perception of the domain where it's collected, but in general, I would think that if it's collected and stored, by that booking engine for their own future use, that could be different. I mean, it doesn't rely on third-party cookies. It as such, when somebody makes a booking, it's with that on that domain with that agent. But it's an interesting point, and one maybe worth diving into a bit more. So what else can we do about this is just an example of consent mode, by the way, and how it models traffic. So we can get an increase in recorded traffic and an increase in recorded revenue traffic. So there's an uplift. That's before consent mode, and that's with consent mode applied. So it's uplifted the data, and you see there's quite an increase in traffic. Just a little side note here: consented users are far more likely to convert. Than non-consented users, so that can skew data a bit. Getting into the weeds a bit, but you do need enough traffic for consent mode to work and start modeling data. If you're a very small site with hardly any traffic, it won't have enough data in which to then uplift. And, we've had some clients who are very borderline in terms of this requirement from Google, and so it hasn't remodeled their data, and they're left just back where they started in a GDPR kind of world where non-consent can drop your tracking by 30–40%. So what's the future of GA4? Is it legal? This is opening up a can of worms. This guy is called Max Schrems, an Austrian activist, lawyer, and author. He runs an organization called NOYB, None of Your Business. He's a privacy advocate. Now, he thinks that the European Union are in cahoots with Google a little bit on here through economic interests, and that they keep saying that GA4 is legal and coming out with different initiatives to say why it's legal. But Max Schrems is right that, you know, GDPR relies on data being stored within the EU or with equivalency or adequacy. So if it goes off to the US, which it does with Google Analytics products, then that data resides in a country which does not have the same privacy laws as us. And we know about Edward Snowden and the infringements of US citizens on their privacy. So it goes back and forth. You'll see this over the years since about 2016. It goes back and forth. The EU says it is. Max Schrems says it isn't. He takes them to court and he wins. They say it is again. He says it isn't. They take him to court and wins, and it just goes on and on and on. They can't change anything. It is what it is. Max Schrems keeps pointing it out, and then the EU come back. So that's why you keep hearing every few years, "Oh, GA4 is not legal." There is a solution to tracking, and it's privacy-centric analytics. And rather than tracking users, it just tracks events, and it doesn't tie those events together to say this user did this. It can say that the user, that those group of people came from this campaign and converted, but it won't say that user came from this campaign and converted. And it's still pretty powerful. You know, if you just want basic tracking of what events are being fired without even the need for a cookie banner, which could confuse a lot of people and make them think that you're not compliant, then something like some of these products might be helpful, you know, like Plausible, Matomo, or Pyrrhic Pro, European data centers and such like. In fact, here's an interesting one. Here's the European Commission. Wow, setting cookies prior to consent. There we go. Pyrrhic Pro cookies. EU data center, no IP address tracking, no IP sent, no third-party tracking, tracks events, not users. So they are, you know, and this is the nuanced thing about cookies. We all go, cookies bad, you need consent. But if those cookies are complying with GDPR, then that's fine. So some of these privacy-centric solutions actually may assist in getting some real data back in terms of volume and allowing to do some benchmarking over time. So to summarize, on this part, we've got what can you do? Well, you can A/B test your cookie banner. That's allowed. You can say who you can basically view the amount of non-consents to your consents and optimize that. You have to watch your benchmarking on that, because how are you, if you introduce an optimization and you suddenly go from 50% consented tracking to 60% consented tracking, you have to identify why that is. And so that's important that that process is looked at. You can enable Google enhanced conversions, you know, tying up that hashed email with Google and to get a better view of conversions for non-consented users. You can implement consent mode if you've got a large enough site and you know you want to pass these parameters for advertising to Google. Is it legal? Jury's out. I would think it's an interesting discussion. But you know, we do have clients in Europe who have enabled advanced mode, so it's very much down to the company. You can adopt a privacy-centric analytics solution, and you can collect first-party data through value exchange. You know, you need trust. You know, give your users something that they're interested in, a guide to the area. Give us your email. This is how we're going to use it. Your first-party. I mean, hotels. Historically, in order to avoid all of Booking.com's, you know, 30–40% charges or whatever they're doing now, commissions, I've always been very keen in terms of you know, collecting first-party data from customers, even at, you know, at reception. And so that first party data will become more important. It will become valuable. So I heard a little ding, by the way, Harry. Is that something that Zoom is
That is
warning?
all absolutely fine. I've just noticed that I've joined it twice, but it wasn't me. So I
All right, okay.
just carry on. I'm sure
Is that good you joined it twice? Right. Yeah, so your first party data is worth something, even if it sits offline. It can be brought into, say, the Google ecosphere. They're building products that want to take that or use that first party data to then merge anonymously with, merge with their first party data, so that the kind of GDPR problems can be overcome and privacy problems can be overcome. So it's important that you keep collecting first party data, that you're that it's legal, that you ask for consent to use that first party data in future advertising. But it's worth something. It's valuable. Here's an interesting slide. I think this puts it in a nutshell. 2014, paid advertising. Maybe if we bump these keyword bids up a bit, add a few negative terms, we should see better performance. And this is kind of like where I joined it, really, in online advertising. But look at it now, 2024, it's far more involved. We've got, maybe if we enable Google enhanced conversions by sending hashed customer data back to Google, ensure consent mode is configured correctly, and connect our CRM to Google Ads via the API. This is your first party data sharing to ensure accurate customer lists, importing offline conversions. Then we should see better performance. I mean, wow, one little change and that's what you get. So all your customer data becomes important, and it means collecting it efficiently is important too. So we've kind of, I think, come to the end of that the webinar in terms of what I've got to say. I think we've got some guides here, and I think Harry will kind of introduce those to people. They're just downloadable guides, and that will give you some more background and hints and tips on GDPR compliance and cookie management itself. Any questions at all?
That was incredibly insightful. Thank you so much. Yes, please do. I know we had a few questions come in, and they were actually answered live. So you covered a few already. In terms of the guides and things, obviously this now, in my view, I think really pushes the boundaries of what can probably be expected from traditional marketing understanding with regard to should this sort of thing be within the skill set and within the remit of the marketing team, or should it kind of land on that technical piece? Whether that's via agency support or sort of more on the IT side. In your experience, what do you feel is a good approach, and how do you think hotels or the hotel marketers in this on the webinar can sort of take it back to their businesses and sort of start assigning responsibility?
Yeah, I think it should be led by marketing, really, but some of the issues are technical. I mean, my background is in marketing. I do a lot of Google Tag Manager measurement framework development for customers so that they know what they're measuring, and this kind of GDPR mitigation. So it sits within our growth team. Now, at times for larger clients where back-end adjustments are needed, then we rely on our technical team. But generally, I would think it's a fusion between the marketing teams and the DPO, if you have a DPO. Now, that's a bit of a battle, usually within organizations. But I think if the marketing team approach it as to where they are they currently compliant, what they need to do to be compliant, what will be the impact of that compliance, how do they mitigate in order to keep marketing, that's the important bit, then they should be in good shape. I'm a big believer in measurement frameworks and having goals, OKRs, KPIs that people can use to actually measure their performance properly over time, return on ad spend, all that kind of thing. Without that, you're dealing in the dark, and you just obviously throw money at problems or challenges, marketing challenges. So that's basically, I think it sits in marketing predominantly.
And also, I think for me, one of the key outcomes of today is that it is an appetite thing. Like if some of the leading companies are falling different sides of the fence, it clearly comes down to it's not purely objective. There is an appetite to it, which is just quite an interesting thing, because I suppose a lot of things in digital, particularly around the law, it's always so clear cut, and there's a definite right or wrong, or this is the right best practice, and this is the methodology going forward. But actually, what we're learning today is that isn't necessarily the case. There might be, it does fall into the appetite, and therefore, because there are potentially legal connotations of that choice of appetite, it goes from sort of marketing perhaps to the wider team, or the wider sort of strategic team and the board and things like that, because it has to go beyond marketing, really.
Absolutely right. And I think that's what's caused the confusion, that it is nuanced. It's almost like a decision about how you want to operate your company. And that can go right to the top. What are the advantages and disadvantages in the route that you choose? Now, I'll give you an example. We've got a client, a large charity, who it wasn't the ICO. They didn't do it through any malintent. It was that there was a Facebook pixel that was fired without consent, and it wasn't the ICO who got to them. The ICO is getting to very few people. It was a Guardian newspaper. And some journalists just going around sites going, is your data safe, and creating a huge moral panic. And if you're involved in the charity side of work, then that can happen. So it's a case of who's going to be outed by who at the end of the day. It's not just the ICO. The ICO was found not to be cookie compliant in terms of their policy recently, their cookie compliant policy. So, I mean, if they can't get it right, who can? But it's a case of being open and honest with your customers. If you can't be open and honest with your customers, that may breed in larger organizations a kind of toxic approach, maybe.
I feel, in the same way that you have the sort of chances with regard to sort of image, right? Of the image rights chances who obviously scour the internet looking for illegal images. I have also noticed it on that compliance side of things as well, saying just sending emails to businesses saying it wasn't right. Pay me this, basically, almost. Sort of chances
there's lots of those. Absolutely. So there's teams of people in some countries who I won't mention who are actually doing that for a living, and they create, because they're legally correct, and it's a very good point, Harry, and they create a massive panic within organizations who actually hadn't checked whether they were compliant or not. So many people are saying banners with "we care about your privacy, we respect your privacy," and then you look in Google Developer Console, they've already dropped you all their marketing cookies. So it's something that you need to navigate and be aware of those issues. We had the cyber squatters with domain names, and those kind of chances. We've got that in GDPR and compliance.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we have a couple of questions come in from the group. So firstly, when a user lands on a site, we pop up the banner. On this banner, the default gives sort of 3 options: to accept, deny, or more options. Is it legal to only give them the option to allow all?
No.
Cool. Done.
So I'll go into more detail there. That was a recent ICO kind of directive, and this has been thrashed through the German courts. They say you need a deny all button rather than accept all or manage preferences. They say you need a deny all button. How many people are doing that? Because that really gives a strong call to action to deny cookies, and that can have a massive impact.
And I think also the I would say the slightly confusing thing is the sort of the leading consent management platforms out there. You know, I use Cookiebot quite a bit, but they're all options. You know, it's not as if you kind of maybe look to the consent management platforms to give you compliant options, but actually you can remove the deny all button. You can do whatever you like with it, even within one of the leading consent management platform tools.
Absolutely.
It's also quite confusing, I think, for users, because they're sort of buying into the consent management platform going, this will keep me safe, but actually the options within it might make you unsafe.
This is an interesting point. I mean, the CMPs, the consent management platforms, are not the moral guidance on this. They are not. They provide tools to do it the way you want to do it. That is it. I mean, there was a bit of outcry about OneTrust's supporting consent mode. You know, why are all these consent management platforms supporting consent mode, advanced consent mode, where cookieless pings are sent, when it's dubious? If you look at a guy called Brian Clifton online, he wrote an article about why advanced consent mode, sending cookieless pings to Google, is not compliant. So yeah, it's an interesting point.
Yeah. Next question we have here is, we've got a cookie compliance and consent mode version 2 set up on our website. Does this then extend to our booking engines too, with a mix of subdomains and not subdomains, or do people need to consent on all of those separately?
I think if it's your primary domain, so say it's McDonald's hotels.co.uk and the subdomain is booking. Then one consent is doable. I mean, you could do it cross organizations even potentially, but you shouldn't need to request from the same kind of McDonald's hotel domain consent twice. It's just once. And that is why when you set up things like OneTrust, the main name should be mcdonaldshotel.co.uk and not the subdomain or www, because then all subdomains are included in that one consent message. Yeah,
I think the tricky thing there is a lot of booking engines, certainly for the maybe smaller hotels, they won't necessarily have that custom domain, and obviously certain booking engine providers don't support the sort of the domain name masking, as it were, which is obviously quite a tricky one.
That is a tricky one, and that's who gets data and where that data is stored, and are they the primary organization? If it's a different domain, the user would assume so. So double consent there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sending in those questions. Yes, in terms, Richard, I don't know if it's a you thing or a Steve thing, but in terms of where we can go from here to get those resources, that would be great. I know there's a couple of email addresses there. We'll put those in the follow-up. So should you wish to get in touch with Steve or Richard about anything that you've learned about today, then of course welcome that conversation.
Yeah, anybody anybody who consented to give their data is going to get the links to those two downloads. Yeah. And if you our email addresses are there, and you can get in touch with us, and we'll send them your way.
Perfect, wonderful. And from our side as well, we've got a recording of the session. There'll be some interesting, and we'll set that along with some useful links, and we'll send that out to everybody. I have a raised hand there. Sharia, I don't know if I see a raised hand. I don't know if you might be able to put something in the chat, or if you could put something in the chat. I can see your hand is raised. I won't be able to hear you necessarily, but either in the Q&A or give it a couple of seconds. If not, just message Steve or Richard. Yeah, they'll be delighted to chat. Well, we're going to wrap things up there, and I just want to say a huge thank you to Steve and Richard for that incredibly insightful session. I've learned a huge amount, and I have no doubt that the community will have really learned a lot there. These guys will be at the awards coming up on the 18th of June, and so if you do get a chance to book your ticket soon, that would be great. It's going to be a very popular event. We've got lots of shortlists that were all announced last week at the National Hotel Marketing Conference. But yes, we've had the question come in. Here we go. How to analyze technical challenges if it's undetectable. If you use it, how much? Sorry, I'm just trying.
Yeah.
How is it possible to track users across browsers and incognito modes?
Not legally, no. I don't.
Not legally.
Don't say no. I mean, there's obviously server-side tracking and things like this, but you still need consent for that. You know, people are going on about server-side tracking like it's a magical solution to getting around consent. What it is it can help bypass browsers that block third-party cookies and other people blocking third-party, ad platforms or ad blockers blocking them. So it's a way to do that. But no, I think the technical challenges there would be massive, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that final question. Brilliant. Well, let's wrap things up there. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great to have you joining us, and thank you again to Steve and Richard from CTI. And we'll catch you all soon.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.